I didn't think I was going to make it till summer unless I
Mm.
fixed it.
Hi, business owners. Today we have Cathy Yerges with us. Cathy is a cafe owner, specialty food grocer,
Yes. Yep.
specialty shop owner in Cambridge, Wisconsin. And Cathy joined Small Business Money School back in February, I believe, or
Yep.
sometime in the winter, and has just been chugging along. And every couple weeks, I see a win from Cathy, and I'm like, a story is coming together. And I wanted to have her on to talk about her experience. So, anyways, welcome, Cathy. Introduce yourself. Tell us, all the things that I
Hi,
missed.
Gina. Great to be here. And yes, I own a cafe and specialty food store in Cambridge, Wisconsin. We just had our 6-year anniversary. It
Oh,
started
wow.
as the cafe first, and then a year and a half into it, we launched into or expanded our specialty food area. And we opened 9 months before COVID, but we have just been chugging along, doing the thing, serving the community, and here we are 6 years later.
What I especially love about you is, and we've on our coaching calls has really come and shined through, is like your love for Wisconsin and how much your business is there to like really serve the community. You talk about, all of the different lines of items that you have
Yeah.
from different
So we're
Wisconsin
cooking
makers.
we're cooking fresh and local in our cafe. Obviously, the coffee is being roasted local, but then in our specialty food store, we represent probably about 125 other Wisconsin makers right now, mainly in the consumable area. So that would be food, shampoos, wine, beer, things that they have to come back and purchase another time. So that is kind of our love, is just supporting not only our local Cambridge community, but then the Wisconsin community, and small businesses and entrepreneurs all over the place. So yeah, I always get excited when there's another small business owner on the coaching calls who, our stories are very similar,
Yes.
regardless of what industry they're in. It's just very similar when you have a brick and mortar business in a small town.
100%. Okay, so you started 6 years ago. What led you to start the business? And what did you do before this?
Yeah. So my career path has always been one to support other entrepreneurs. My parents were entrepreneurs. They owned a retail store. That's sort of where I grew up. They moved into hospitality. And I went to college for finance and banking, was in the banking industry for a dozen years. Really kind of fell in love with the commercial side of banking and the cash management side. So there's going to be a lot of irony in my story because I knew it all, or I was supposed to know it all. I was a finance and banking manager who was helping small businesses manage their cash and get the most out of their cash flow, with all the bells and whistles and the tools. And I left that when my children were young and started my own business doing virtual assistants. So I did bookkeeping, marketing, admin for small businesses from
Oh,
my
I didn't know
home
that.
for about a decade till my kids grew up and were in high school and didn't really need me. And then I uh, saw this building on Main Street, and as like many small businesses and small towns, the main streets are dying, and where it's just very difficult. And we have a few businesses and buildings in our town where they're vacant, but they're not available for rent. So the landlords or property owners are using them for storage or for other means, and so the downtown is kind of dying. And this building became vacant, and I was determined not to let that become another statistic on Main Street. I talked to a friend who was also looking at the building. He was looking to purchase it, and have a main tenant, and I did not want to own it. But I wanted the front half of it. So it was sort of a match made in heaven. And here we are, 6 years later.
Wow, I didn't know that. It's so true. I was recently in a town that I used to really love, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of vacancies. And like, this is not even a depressed area. I'm like, what's going on? And I know COVID had a lot to do with that.
It did. There's a lot of factors. as we've talked on the coaching calls, I wear a number of hats volunteering throughout different places in town. And I've had a chance to talk with some of the business owners. Some of them, it's honestly cheaper storage than a storage facility because it's in some areas it's hard to find a storage facility. A lot of them have moved their businesses online, which is probably three of our buildings on Main Street. So they don't need a storefront, but the rent here is just so much cheaper, and they ship or mail or do online ordering. And so it changes the dynamic of Main Street when the doors aren't
Yeah.
open to the customers.
100%. Okay. I want to shift gears a little. I want to go back to your business. You started 9 months before COVID.
Did.
What happened?
Yeah.
Because you have a brick and mortar spot, so it's like I'm assuming you were forced to shut down.
We were, and gosh, going back 6 years. I mean, I remember the day, um, and I had my plan. I was trying to fill a void on Main Street, just a gathering space. I was going to sell coffee and donuts to sort of replicate one of the other places that closed a few years ago, and my whole vision had to pivot because people weren't going to be able to come in and enjoy their coffee and donuts anymore. So through COVID, the one thing I learned was how to pivot and give it a try, experiment. If it doesn't work, take your lessons and move on. And I've been doing that for 6 years. I think one of the things you've taught me is it's okay, but there's going to come a time when I can just be okay in my business. I don't have to keep experimenting and creating new and doing all of the things I thought I had to. I can just be okay with what I've already built. So that's sort of that's where I'm working right now, through your coaching and the calls and stuff, is just being okay with what I have and what I can offer the customers. But I moved into doing soups and selling soup by the quart, or doing meals, family sized meals that people could pre-order. I was fortunate that I have a big enough footprint here, so I could create a system where customers could do pickup outside, a curbside pickup, or even once they started opening doors but had to have a 6 feet distance, I had enough space to place my tables here. So I was, technically I was only closed for like 3 days till I got my game plan together on what I was going to do. And then I just reopened with different offers. I had my family in here cooking. I taught my 14-year-old son how to run the kitchen, and he ran it for 2 years for me, um, during the summers, and weekends. For a while they didn't have school, and then it went online school. So I gave them something to do and learn how to cook. And my husband was in here. I remember it was my birthday on March 20th of that year. And my family was in here making like 30 pans of lasagna that people had purchased. But that was what was going to pay the rent that month.
Yeah.
And our
Yeah.
community really came forward. They saw what I was trying to do here, and they didn't want me to fail. They didn't want this to be the nail in the coffin. And so they did everything they could to help me get through COVID.
That's incredible. I think COVID just really taught a lot of us how capable we are at handling rapid change. It might not be fun, but you know, your story is so similar to so many small businesses across America who just in the course of a few days had to pivot their entire business model.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you did it, which
I
is
did,
amazing.
but I didn't have your system in place. So that COVID created a lot of debt, and it's scary right now because in my communities of peers that I talk to, there's so many restaurants closing right now because of the COVID debt that's still hanging over their head,
Right.
and they don't see any way out. Their business might be making a little money or break even, but it's not producing enough to pay off all the debt that accumulated during COVID. And that is the position I was in when I found you. It's like, we're doing
Yeah.
okay, we're breaking even. I'm not really taking a paycheck because my money keeps going to pay down the debt. And how am I going to get out of this?
So let's talk about it. What was the COVID debt, and how is it the original debt that's lasted this whole time, or is it been cycles of like paying
It's
it
the
off and then
cycle.
getting into, okay. Tell me
Yeah,
what
it's
happened.
it's the cycle. I you know, again, my background in finance and banking, I should have known better, but I was determined to open this business on the credit that I had available, and I had a very large credit limit on our credit card, and so this with an offer of 0% interest. And so the original plan was take the 40,000 on the credit card, you've got 18 months of 0% interest, you can get it done and paid off. And 9 months into that, I didn't have any income to pay it off. And so that original 40 at its peak blossomed to maybe around 90, which was probably at the first part of, well, not the first part of this year, probably about a year ago. It peaked at 90, and most of it was sitting on that credit card loan, that merchant loan. And just like your class says, you put it there, but you don't have cash flow. So then the credit cards build up. And so it has been this revolving cycle of paying one to pay off the other. And so I just had to put a stop to it, and learned a lot of lessons. I have taken, this is probably the third Square loan that I had taken out, and it's always done in desperation. Like, payroll is going to hit this week and I can't make payroll. How am I going to get cash? And it's always in that desperate moment that, they send the email, you're approved. And so you take it because you just don't know what your options are. And there's a lot of emotions that go along with that when you're running a business too. And so you take it, and then it just makes it easier for a little bit until you really face the problems and start
Until it
addressing the
comes right
problem.
back. Yeah. I always say, like, with this kind of debt, this is like classic keep the lights on debt. And gotta do something to make the payroll, to pay the expenses. And there's no room for shame or feeling bad about that. Like, we all gotta do what we gotta do. And how do we break that cycle so we don't have to keep doing it? Especially too, like, you're not alone. We have lots of businesses who are dealing with the aftermath of COVID debt. And it's like, yeah, it's like 5, 6 years later, and it's still looming over
Yes.
our heads. Like, those little moments of relief don't last long
Right.
enough.
Right. The businesses
So,
have recovered, but they just can't recover enough to recoup
right,
what
right.
was spent.
So when you joined Money School, do you remember about how much debt you had when you joined?
I think I was. Hmm, it's hard to say because all I see in my head is that big number 70, which was
Yeah.
the Square loan. And now I had paid down more than half of that by the time I joined
Okay.
Money School. So I was probably around 50,
Hmm.
30, maybe 25 of it. 30 was on the Square loan, and then the rest were credit cards that kept jumping again. And, when I took out the Square loans, I did the math. I said, okay, they want this minimum payment over a 60-day period that equals 13% interest rate. Okay, that's not bad. Um, but then if that's all they took, it would be fine. But they don't stop once you hit your minimums. They just keep taking the percentage of
What is
sales
it, like
until.
a 20% of a sale or something like that?
Yes, it depends on
Sure.
how high of a balance, but yeah, they're taking like 20% of your credit card sales, plus the merchant fees are leaving and all of that, and it's just really hard. And so I don't even want to know what interest rate I ended up paying on that,
Yeah.
because you get excited because business picks up, and or you hit Christmas and it's a good time and your sales are up, but that just means they took more of it for the loan, and it's
Right.
not helping your cash flow. And so with joining your program, I just had to hold my breath and get through a couple months of really slow sales, and just figure out how I was going to pay the bills, not going back to the Square loan, to let that monster kind of die and be done with it.
That's actually a good point. You joined our program during your slow months.
I did.
Why did you join during the slow months?
because I didn't think I was going to make it till summer unless I
Mm,
fixed it.
yeah.
We live in a sort of touristy town, and I knew come June the lake tourists would come back, and people would, come out again. But looking at, I think I probably looked at around January, looking at the January numbers that were coming in, like we wouldn't have survived. I had no idea how I was going to make it to summer, much less pay off debt if I
Yeah.
didn't figure something out.
So what did you do when you got in the program? What were the first things you did for the listeners who were like, how do you how do you
Yeah.
even make it to summer if that's the
Well, and
prognosis?
so the fall before, I was probably listening to all your podcasts. My son was a collegiate athlete, and so I would be in the car a lot, traveling to his meets, and I would just listen to your podcast for 4 hours straight and it all made sense to me. This, like you said, it's nothing new. It's just discipline and work in the system. And it made sense. And so in January, I think you had an offer or something, or the free webinar I finally listened to. And after that, I said, okay, I paid the money for this program. It went on credit card, or I did the payment plan or whatnot. And you probably had a few failed payments from me during that payment plan. Um, and so I just devoured the content in the course so that I could understand the foundation, the basics of it all. And I made sure I was on all the coaching calls that I could participate in. And I, submitted my reports to get feedback from your team. And it really, like, I think the coaching calls really were the part that got me to stick to it, because there was one call where I said, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. And you said, it's not the end of the world if you have to take out another square loan. And it sort of released a little something, like it, I could, but I really don't want to. So it was just enough to get me to buckle down again and figure out another way, come up with something creative, to make it through all of that.
It's so true that like I always tell my clients, even if you really don't want to do something, like you want to avoid it at all costs, I think about a dinner table or something. Like I think about a table and I think about, let me put all my options on the table. And when I have all my options on the table, that lowers the pressure because you can tell yourself, okay, if this doesn't work, I have five backups.
Right.
And when we take options off the table, the pressure goes up because it's like, this better work because there's no backups. And of course, some people respond differently to that. Some people like the pressure, they do well under pressure, to each their own. But yeah, I always recommend like put every option, even if you don't like it, because that will help you come up with ideas on how not to do it.
Right.
Um, I remember, are you open to talking about the coaching that I gave you around your revenue streams?
Yes. I I took a lot of it to heart, but I probably I have a new revenue stream as well, but
You know,
it's something I like to do. So the whole conversation when was around, do you like to do it? And I'm like, no. And so then I let that go, and I have a different
so
revenue stream.
Kathy, I don't know if you know this, but you birthed an entire new concept for me that I just taught today on a live inside of
Oh,
the Bird. So you
really?
have to go.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you were name dropped. I mean, you're gonna have to go listen to it.
Okay.
But essentially, I remember we were talking about, because you have the cafe, you have the kitchen, you have the specialty food, and then you had catering. And we were talking about, the revenue for each of them, the profit for each of them, the time spent for each of them, and I told you to cut catering,
I
and
did.
you did
You did? Yeah. I think
because
you
it
told me
was.
twice, actually. You told me once, and then we circled back to it, because my question was, is it not doing well because I'm not hitting the marketing hard, or my offers aren't right? And you just started and asked, do you like doing it? And I'm like, no. And that was done.
That was done. And you didn't like doing it and it wasn't making substantial money for the business
Right.
anyways. It was taking your time and not creating a return.
Right.
And you didn't like it.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that birthed an entire new concept called expensive revenue, where we have revenue that's too expensive and we're not willing to let it go because of the possibility of like maybe one day. But we really need to, especially when there's debt and our backs are up against the wall, we need to come back to our core business. Like, what is the main thing in the business that makes money? And how can I grow that instead of a
Right.
like, it's almost like a saving, it's like, oh, it's a saving grace. It's gonna fix everything. And it's not.
No, no. And it was also coming at a point where I was working through a customer who wanted catering, and it was getting complicated. There were a lot of back
Mm,
and forths, there were menu changes, and I don't want to be that kind of caterer. I can do a good job if you let me just come in and do my job, but I don't want, yeah, I didn't want it.
yeah.
But it allowed space for me to pivot because I was renting out part of my I rent my space. I lease my space and I didn't need all of the square footage. And so I was subleasing part of it to another small business. And they, in April, I think, told me that they weren't going to renew their lease. And I was doing some other projects for our community and I decided to open up a bookstore. We don't have a bookstore, um, but it has brought me tremendous joy. It's a used bookstore in the upper level, so it's right above the cafe. And it's bringing back some of the things that I liked about catering, doing charcuterie boards and doing wine pairings and creating intimate events and building community. So it all goes back to the concept of building community and smaller groups, bringing them together in my space rather than COVID really had me pivot to people's entertainment and gathering outside of my space. And so that's where catering came from, and I wanted to bring them back to my space. So now I host a monthly book club called Pages and Pairings. This is our fourth month, and I've sold out every month. It's a group of, this month will be 18 people who come together, and I pair a dinner and drinks around the theme of the book. So it's hitting on my
That sounds great.
creativity
I want to
level.
come.
Yeah, it's really fun. So that has added some new energy into the building, and it just fits with the other avenues. I serve the specialty food that I have in my market and the wine, and we do things from the cafe, and people can come up to the bookstore and just enjoy the space.
Well, I
So
think it's such a good example of like, and I have had my coaches tell me this, where it's not about, following to a letter what your coach says, but like really taking the coaching and making it your own. And also like, when we finally allow something that's not serving us to let that go, what else can be born in that space that
yeah.
was being used up by this other thing that wasn't serving us?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's been fun, and I it, it's done a lot of things, but it's also let me see the other areas of my business that I don't really enjoy, because I just want to be up in the bookstore working and talking with people and looking at all the books. But if I have to take a shift in the kitchen or do something else. So it's like, okay, how can I get rid of that thing that I don't want? I don't want to have to be in the kitchen at 6:30 in the morning. So what do I have to do to solve that problem?
Right. It's just current problems.
Yep,
So let's come back to the square loan because you paid it off.
I did.
Well
I
done.
made a game out of it. I wanted to pay it off. I can't remember the exact date, but it was like 2 days past my goal of paying it off. I think I wanted it done by May 31, maybe April 30th. I can't remember. But I was making a game out of it as to how fast I could pay it off. And I paid it off and celebrated in the group with everybody.
I mean, that's 79,000, over $79,000. Oh, I have it here. You paid it off on May 30th.
May 30th.
That's your completion date, according to your
Yes.
screenshot.
Yes, my completion date. I did not want to enter May was the pickup of my season here with the visitors and the tourists, but
Yeah.
I did not want to go into June having to pay off that loan. I wanted June to be able to build my buffer and start my
Yeah.
waterfall. So
Yeah. I think what's so great about this and what I'm so excited for you is this is gone. And exactly like you said, now you can use your summer months to build up your working capital and your buffer. And then come winter, when things slow down again, you won't have to go back into the debt.
I won't.
Like,
I know.
it's
I'm sort of
done.
looking forward to that.
Yeah. The
But it's
cycle.
there's. I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say there's like you're still in my head every time I look at ordering new inventory. Like Christmas season's coming up, I need to order inventory and just not over ordering and just
Right.
ordering what I can handle and cleaning out my shelves and figuring out ways to remove some of the old stale inventory. So
A
all of those
hundred
things.
percent. And especially too, like I can understand the allure of like, I need to order a lot of the stuff because if I don't, then I don't want to not have inventory. And my thought is, I would rather you run out of inventory at Christmas than go back into debt when we've just stabilized.
Right.
And there will be a time and place where you get to have all the fun things again in the business for Christmas. But like there's nothing wrong with that. Like sometimes I think we're afraid of that. Like, oh my God, well, what if I run out of inventory? I'm like, well, what if? It'll be fine. Then it'll be a hot topic.
Be a good thing. Right. It'll be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be
And
a
it's
good
not like,
thing.
I can always find something that has a short lead time. So
Yeah.
it might not be the thing, but I can always find something to put on the shelves that has a short
Yeah.
lead time.
Yeah. It's all the current problems.
Yeah.
Um, did you do anything else that you want to share with our listeners who may be in a similar position to where you were? Did you have to do anything else to get that loan paid off in that amount of time?
Hmm, there were, I shifted a few payments, just kind of juggling my cash flow a little bit to make sure that I could cover all my checks when I knew Square was going to take out their loan. The only other thing I really did was put up a small sign at my cash register that said cards accepted, cash preferred. I have d- debated for years whether or not I'm going to pass on the surcharge, merchant surcharge to customers, and I do not. And I really don't want to go that route. Using Square actually doesn't have the functionality to do it to meet all the legal parameters. And so it would have involved moving to a whole different point of sale, which I did investigate, but that wasn't going to be worth making the move just to recoup that. And so I just again kind of just challenged myself each week. Can I move 1 extra % of sales to cash versus credit card? Can I encourage? And a lot of people would ask, do you prefer cash or card? And in the past, I would be like, I really don't have a preference, whatever's easiest for you. And now I just voiced, cash helps us to keep our costs low. And just sort of having that conversation in a very subtle way with our customers shifted a few % of our sales to cash over credit card.
I'm curious though, because the Square loan requires they take a percentage of your credit card sales. So how did the cash speed up your debt payoff for that loan, or did it just help you keep some more of the cash in the
It
business?
helped me keep more cash, so I did not have to get renew my Square loan because
Mm,
we were in those really tight weeks where if I don't come up with a little bit more cash, I'm going to have to take out that second or third Square loan. And just doing a few subtle things allowed me to do that. I did run a few clearance sales in January just to move some inventory. It created some sales through the system. Again, it's the idea of sunk costs, which like I already paid the money. I have to get over the fact that I'm not getting an ROI on this. I just need to sell this bottle of wine, and I it's not good business practice because I sold bottles of wine I paid $15 for $10, but I just needed to get that cash back into my business, and it was just sitting on my shelf. anyways. And so I discounted a few products to increase sales, generate a little bit more cash through the system, cut my losses, and learn the lessons that I needed to learn from that.
That's such a good point for our product based businesses because, like sometimes our pride gets in the way of like, well, I bought this bottle for 15, I have to sell it for 20.
Right.
And if it's really not working, you would rather be out the 15 than be out the 5.
Right. It's that's what your head is thinking is
Yeah,
if it just sits on the shelf a little bit longer, the right person will
maybe.
come along and buy it for 20. And, after 6 months, no, it's not. It
Yeah.
was a bad buy. I just have to get my cash back out of it.
Right.
But it
And
takes
learn
a
your
really
lesson.
long time to get to that point of a
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah. And now, I mean, like now either A, I'm not going to buy those wines anymore, or what about it didn't work.
Right. Right.
That's more than a $5 lesson.
It, it is. It is.
That's a five
So
thousand dollar lesson.
it's making me nervous going into a buying period here for the holidays. Like the pressure's on to make good inventory purchases.
Yeah.
And because I like to support small businesses, I brought in a number of things over the last year and a half for new businesses where their products maybe weren't as tested. I wanted to give them a chance because I like to support the small local businesses, but also because I have especially food businesses, there's dates on that stuff. And so it was
Yeah.
stale dating and I just wasn't moving it as fast as I needed to.
Yeah. Again, just lessons and going into this new buying season, even if you're a little, first of all, come get coached. But you can bring all those lessons into this new buying season too.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
I'm
good.
eager. I'm going to have to hold the reins a little bit tighter on my excitement. So I've been scouring the catalogs and the online websites, and in the past I would just add them all up to the cart and hit the buy button, and now I'm finding them, tagging them, adding products to the shopping carts, but not hitting the checkout just yet. Letting my emotions just kind of sit on it, give it a second look before I actually buy it.
It's honestly, it's those little things that make the biggest difference, right? It's like the raindrops make oceans.
Yep. Yep.
Raindrops make oceans, even in just like your change of behavior. I'm like, okay, I'm going to let my excitement be, and then I'm going to let it simmer down
Right.
until I take the next step. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Let me
good.
look at everybody. Let me, make a choice. And in the past, I just didn't want to take the extra time to circle back to some of the vendors. So if I liked it, I just bought it right away. And then I'd find something better from another vendor. And now I'm just sort of, okay, we're just going to hold on all of these until I have a chance to look at everybody. And then I'll make my final decisions.
I'm curious for someone who's sitting here listening to this episode who may, again, be in the position that you were in, like, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll next week, or I have a lot of COVID debt, or anything like that. What would you tell that person? What piece of advice would you give them now that you're, on the other side of that?
It's going to be painful, but it's worth it. The coaching and the cheerleading from all of the other members of your group, and just the place to be vulnerable. I probably cried during one of the sessions at one point, and every week we have other members who just it's just that release. It's just the safe space to let let things out. And once you let those emotions out, or that shame or that guilt or whatever you talk about, then you can get on the other side of actually the solutions. But until you're hiding behind your pride, or I should know better, or I've got this, or nobody understands, you just keep hiding it. And once you can just get to that safe space where others get me, and they're going to let me wallow for a little bit, but then they're going to leave me with a simple step that I can do to get on the other side of it. And the investment has clearly paid for itself now in reduced interest payments and reduced finance charges. And it's just setting me up for success. Even if I don't want to do this forever, whether I want to retire or sell the business, either way I want to go out on my terms, not the bank's terms. So I just took
That's good.
back control of it.
That's so good. And it's so true. Who said, Brene Brown, maybe? Shame dies when stories are told in safe spaces.
There you go.
I think it's
Yep.
so, and there's not a lot like you may be like Kathy in a main street with a vibrant, small business community around you, or you may be like me, sitting in your house all day. I don't talk to other business owners except for you guys. I talk to you guys all
Yes.
day,
Yeah.
but yeah, it can be lonely to feel like I don't have anyone who really understands, especially too if like small business numbers can look shiny to people who aren't business owners, like, oh, I made $40,000 but I'm drowning.
Right.
So I think it's so important to have that community.
Yeah. And the community views our business as a huge success. They see customers walking in all day long, the parking lot's full, people talk about us. And so to the local community, we're a success. What could possibly be wrong over here? And they don't understand the stress I'm in, the late nights, the working a shift and then going home and doing all the book work to just try to figure out what I'm missing. The other thing I did, which it prompted during this few months that I've been in the program, is I reached out to another coffee shop owner in a town 40 miles from me, somebody who I was following on socials. And on the outside, they looked like they had everything going on. She had this line of customers, everybody loved her, she was winning awards. And last year at one point, they announced that they were going to be closed on Sundays. And I'm like, okay, Sundays are usually a pretty good day, but okay, they're taking Sundays off. And then at the beginning of spring, they announced that they were going to be closed on Saturdays. Their busiest day, they were going to be closed. And she's very open and transparent on her social media posts and just said that you all have seen the lines. You've stood in those lines that go out the door on Saturdays. We want to support our staff, and they cannot continue to cover double shifts. We can't find anybody to continue to work on Saturdays. And so we are just going to, for the best interest of our employees, we're going to close on Saturdays. And that sat with me for months. Like, how can she do that? What am I doing wrong that this very similar coffee shop can close on their busiest day and not worry about it? And so I got an introduction to her, and I had a phone call or an email exchange, and I asked her what she was doing, and her response said, "It's not what you're going to want me. It's not what you want to hear, but here's how we're doing it. I don't take a salary. My husband has a full-time job. All of these things I'm struggling with, she's struggling with." And I just responded. I said, it's actually exactly what I needed to hear. I needed to hear that what is looking perfect on the outside, you guys are doing the same thing I'm doing. I'm not really taking a paycheck. My husband carries the benefits, has a full-time job. Um, and it's no different. But she put herself and her employees first. They're doing it because it was a passion for them and they wanted to give their community something, which was the same reason I started. And it was just getting to the point where they didn't have much more to give. And that was a reckoning with me. Like, if I don't do something, I'm not going to be able to have much more to give here either. So I have to start saying no. And another person, another mentor told me, you want to disappoint people at a rate that they can tolerate. And so that, it's always, what will people think? Or I have this group that likes to come in on Monday mornings and all of this. And she just said, you need to disappoint people at a rate they can tolerate.
That's sage advice, because to this other person's point, like, if you don't pour into your own cup, it's going to empty out soon enough.
Yeah.
And um and this is where, like, I'm really people, my coaches make fun of me. I'm very passionate about owner's pay, because I'm like, that is part of you filling your cup back. Otherwise, you won't keep going, which we'll work with you next on,
Yes, that's
Kathy.
my next step.
It's your next step, one thing at a time. Um, but yeah, I'm like, it's not because you're being greedy. It's like actually a form of you enabling the business to continue on for many, many years to come. But it's so important for us to hear these stories that like the external success, it doesn't show the full picture of what's going on under the surface,
Exactly.
and we cannot know. And it's so easy, gosh, it's so easy for us to compare and despair and be like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong that they have the line out the door and I don't? It's so easy, but I'm always so cautionary, like you don't know what they're actually dealing with. And that's
Exactly.
why I love these the small business money school group calls, because you hear it. You hear the
You
behind the
do.
scenes. You hear the, oh, I thought this person was doing this, but actually they're struggling with that. And it just reminds us that we're all human, right? We're all human and we all
Exactly.
have issues and we're all working through it.
Yep. Working through it one thing at a time.
One thing at a time. All right, Kathy, thank you so much for
Well,
coming on
thanks,
and chatting
Gina.
with us. I've just been so inspired by your story. I've been referencing you in conversations here and there.
Thank
And,
you.
I went back on our Wins channel because Kathy's a Wins channel poster. I love it. And I looked at like all the wins you shared. And you should do this too because it was good. It started with the little things. It was like, I
It
saved
did.
$200 on this thing. And then it was a bigger thing. And then it was slightly bigger. And then it was a $79,000 loan. And it just showed this narrative arc of, just starting with what you can control, even if you have no idea how the big thing is going to happen yet. And I can't wait to see what we do next.
I can't either. I need to clear my schedule so I can make the coaching calls again. I get
Yes.
disappointed when I miss them, so I need
Yes.
to redo my schedule.
So good. Well, for people who are in Wisconsin or planning on being around, where can they find you? What's the name of your cafe?
The business is Cambridge Market. So there's a cafe, the specialty food store, and then the bookstore is called Mustard Seed Books, all at 217 West Main Street in Cambridge. We are kind of halfway between Madison and Milwaukee.
Amazing. If you guys are stopping by or driving through or going by, please stop by.
That's right.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Gina.